All right, guys. Well, welcome. Like I said, you may not know who we are, but my name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I actually was in the field of ABA for 13 years before I decided to sit for my BCBA exam. And like many of you, I had a lot of testing anxiety. I've had a lot of personal self-worth issues and self-value issues, and I didn't see myself being able to take this test. And so I was working as an RBT, and then I wound up working in early intervention. They allowed me to do case management. I felt like I was functioning in every way I wanted to as a BCBA without needing to sit for the exam. So I felt like I found a loophole. And then during COVID, I decided to uproot my life. Actually, I decided to go on vacation. I decided I was working from home. Everything was still shut down. So why would I be in cold New Jersey when I could be in sunny Arizona for the winter? I actually didn't know at the time that Arizona does in fact have winter. I thought that it would be sunny and warm all winter, and it's not true. I have my ugly sweater from New Jersey, proving that it is actually cold right now in Arizona. And so I wound up getting work out here and realizing I needed to sit for my BCBA exam. And like many of you, so this was not really a career change for me, but it was a big life event, right, that took place in my adulthood. And I was trying to move, I was trying to relocate, just like many of you were trying to juggle work and life and school and families, kids, and maybe being a mom and maybe being a wife or a husband or a father. And now you have this big task that's in your way. So my company was Hope Education Services, and I had really been producing content for parents until I realized how hard this was. And I couldn't even afford any of the study materials. And so I wanted to create a way where I could provide you guys really exceptional value at the lowest possible cost we could to make sure that everyone had the ability to sit and pass their exam. That's when I found Dr. Katherine May from ABA Mindset, and we merged together to create the Behavior Bosses. And let Katie tell you a little bit about her story, and then we'll jump into going over some questions from Task List A.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, guys. I'm Dr. Katherine May. You can call me Katie. A lot of these are familiar faces. I'm so happy to see everybody. So just piggybacking off of what Jessica had said, we came together because we wanted to create materials, resources, and whatnot, because we understand what the struggle is with the exam. I struggled a bit. I didn't pass it my first couple times, and I had to kind of circle back and refocus. So, you know, when I am creating resources or tutoring or something along those lines, I'm doing it just like Jessica, like from the heart, and really just putting a lot into it because we understand your position. Other than that, I'm just so grateful you guys are here with us tonight, and we hope that you take these resources and really benefit from them.
Awesome. So guys, what we're going to do is we're actually going to be hosting these webinars every day this week. We're going to be going through different parts of the task list every day. And so we might even try to finish it next week. We know it's the holidays, so we can't promise, but we're going to try to go through the parts of the task list. And what we're really going to do is just give you 5 mock questions for each part of the task list. Today, we're going to talk about task list A. This is based on the 5th edition. So make sure you know that if you're taking the 4th, this is not A on the 4th. And we are going to just give you these 5 mock questions. We're going to go over them, and then you'll be able to take this permanent product home with you. I'll email it out to everybody in the morning or tonight. And then, you know, we'll use this as a gauge to figure out really what you need to study. So I do encourage you to jump on every day this week. I do want this to be interactive. So if you have a question, I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat. And then I will call on you to either unmute, or I'll answer your question. If I'll call you on you to unmute if I need more information, or I'll answer your question. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes. I will read this out loud, and then I'll give you guys a couple minutes. Arnisha is a BCBA who is working with Jessica's dog, Lucky. Arnisha observes that whenever another dog passes by the house, Lucky will bark. She wrote out the following operational definition of behavior. When another dog passes the house, Lucky will jump on the fence, bark loudly, and scratch at the fence. Which scientific level of understanding does this represent? I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to put their answer in the chat. And when you guys get the recording, I will take out these pauses, so you're not getting these pauses in your recordings. All right, I think we're going to go over this now. So everyone who sent me the answers got it right. The answer is description, right? So I do want to take the time not to just throw these answers at you, But to take the time to go over what are the different things that are part of this question, and really what do these things mean in the answer choice? What is description, prediction, and verification and control, right? So description is simply when you're stating what's happening. That's really what description is. All you're doing is you're stating what's happening. This is where you're going to be making your definition for behavior, defining your behavior. This is just simply a statement of facts, right? So once you have that statement of facts, you're going to be making a prediction. The prediction is simply your hypothesis about the function of the behavior. Now, this is not just that you're going to like ask your spirit guides or your like, archangels what they think that the behavior definition is, right? And we're BCBAs or soon to be BCBAs. So we're going to do some sort of functional behavior assessment to predict some sort of observation, indirect observation or direct observation, indirect assessments like checklists, talking to parents, rating scales to determine what do we think that the behavior, the function of the behavior is. So that is what the prediction phase is. Then we want to verify that. So we want to verify that by doing an experiment, right? By writing an intervention that is related to the function of the behavior and seeing whether or not we can prove that there is in fact a relationship between the dependent variable and the independent variable. Did we actually demonstrate the fact that we verify that we did have the right function? And if our intervention is written correctly and our function is correct, then the intervention will work. So that's where we're verifying it. When we verify things, we don't want to just verify it once, right? Because it could be a fluke. There could be some sort of confounding variables in the environment that made it look like we were correct, but we weren't. We want to verify it multiple times. Once we verify something multiple times, then we can demonstrate with control. That's when we have the highest level of understanding. And we do, in fact, then know that we have a relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. So does that make sense? And if in the chat, if anyone has a question about that, feel free to put it in the chat. Okay. And if everyone gets that, Katie, do you want to take over for question 2?
Absolutely. Natasha is a BCBA who is working with Jillian, a 4-year-old girl with autism. Natasha has a bad headache and is having difficulty concentrating. She does her best to not complain and get through the session. What is the headache? So I'm going to go ahead. Jess, are you getting some answers at your end?
Yeah, I'm getting some really good answers. I am getting some confusion though. So I think this is, and if you're confused, that's totally fine. That's why we are doing this. So by the time you leave today, you're not going to be confused about this anymore.
Absolutely. That's why we're here, right? So your answer is going to be C, which is a private event. Okay, so a headache is something that's going on inside your skin, inside your body, right? So I'm not able, as an observer, as an outside observer, to measure that behavior. I can't measure your headache, but you can feel your headache and you can express that you feel the headache. So that's why it's a private event, which came along with radical behaviorism created by B.F. Skinner, right? So that was added on to methodological behaviorism, which was just observable and measurable behaviors. And then later was radical behaviorism, which also includes private events, such as a headache based off of this scenario. Some other examples are maybe you have an itch, maybe your skin's itching, maybe you have a toothache. So it's whatever going on within your own skin. As far as an observable event, that would be something more along the lines of something that I can observe and then measure. Getting up and walking to the fridge and taking out a soda pop, hitting your neighbor, SIB behaviors. I can observe that and measure it. I can view it. I can visually see it and take data on that. Along with your observable event, we're going to look at B, which is an overt event. So overt, you want to keep your O's together, right? Overt, observable. If it's an overt behavior, it's going on outside the skin, like we were just talking about. It's something I can observe and I can measure, as opposed to your private event, which is going on within yourself, and you're the only one who can express that. Does that make sense to you guys? What do we have some confusion about? I really would love to facilitate some discussion and really want to hear some of your questions.
So I'm getting 2 good questions in the chat that were sent to me directly. And the first one was actually about question 1, not about this.
Okay,
so
no
question
problem.
1 Yeah, someone asked, what is the main difference between description and prediction? Description is simply going to be a statement of the facts, whereas prediction is when you're going to interpret those facts and you're going to guess, make some sort of prediction that either a behavior is likely to occur in a given situation or about the function of why a behavior occurs. So when you're looking at description alone, it's just going to be what you observe and see. It's not going to have any information about what you think the function really is. When you're talking about the prediction, that's when you're going to say, well, it seems like when Jessica says, put your answer in the chat, or Katie says, put your answer in the chat, people put their answer in their chat. So now so if I was giving description, I would say, Jessica and Katie are doing a webinar. They're asking people to put their answers in the chat. Now I could make a prediction, which would say, when Jessica and Katie ask people to put their answers in the chat, they put their answers in the chat. They're likely to do that, right? Or I could say that people are likely reinforced by social positive reinforcement when they put their answers in the chat in the form of attention or praise, right? That's being maintained by attention or praise. I could make that prediction. But with description, there is no prediction involved.
So I have a pretty good example that I really love. Let's say your husband or your boyfriend, he wakes up every morning and he makes himself a cup of coffee and he reads the newspaper as he does that. And that's when he wakes up to his alarm at 7 a.m. Now, let's say he sleeps through his alarm, and you notice instead of making the coffee on the days he sleeps through his alarm, because now he's a bit late, he doesn't make his own coffee and sit and read the newspaper. He orders ahead. He makes a phone call to call the deli on the block, down the block, and have the coffee made for him so he can go pick it up on his way out. So if this happens multiple times, then you can then predict, hey, if he sleeps through his alarm, I'm going to predict that he's going to order out his coffee. But if he wakes up at 7 a.m., right, because he does that more often than not, then you know what he's going to do. You're not that you necessarily know, but you're going to predict that he's probably going to sit down, make his own coffee at home, and read the newspaper like he typically does. So that's what you want to think when you're thinking of prediction. Based on previous behaviors, you can predict future behaviors, as opposed to description, which you're just merely describing what you're observing, just like Jessica had mentioned.
So let's look at question 3. Okay. It says, Katherine is a BCBA who just got offered a job at a new ABA agency with higher pay. Before leaving her clients, she made sure that every intervention plan she wrote had every detail required for the BCBA to take over her cases. Which dimension of ABA is she following? Yes, I see really good answers here, guys. I think everyone got this so far. They put their answer in. I am going to just go on ahead because we have a hard cutoff at 30 minutes because we both have obligations after this. But technological, right, is the answer here. So technological means that it's written out so that way other people can carry the interventions out. It is an ethical requirement that our interventions are written in a way that they can easily be understood and carried out by another person. It is part of ABA. I do want to, again, go through all the other answer choices so you guys do know what they are. So applied, right, is that it's socially relevant and socially important to a person. So this is the idea that if I were to teach a child to touch his nose every time I held up a red index card, that is not applied, right? That is not relevant and important to that child's life. If I teach the child who attends some sort of church program and they play basketball every day after church, how to play basketball, that would be socially important. It would be applied, right? He's going to contact that reinforcement in his natural environment. So that is really, again, part of the ethics. Everything we do must be relevant to a person's life. Behavioral simply means that it is behavioral nature, right? We're not going to say we think a child is anxious. We're going to be just simply talking about what we see in measurable and observable terms. That is behavioral. That differs from conceptually systematic, where conceptually systematic is saying that our interventions must be based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. So that is a little bit different than being behavioral. Behavioral is talking about describing things in a way that's behavioral, and conceptually systematic means really intervening on behaviors in a way that's in alignment with the principles of applied behavior analysis. So Katie, I'll let you take away question 4.
You got it. All right, Angelica of BCBA teaches one of her students to quack like a duck every time she holds up a blue index card. Which dimension of ABA did she violate? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and answer this for you, and your answer is going to be A, applied. She teaches one of her students to quack like a duck every time she holds up a blue index card. So when you're utilizing the applied dimension of ABA, you want to make sure that you're teaching socially significant behaviors. So if you're teaching one of your learners how to quack like a duck every time you hold up a blue index card, is that socially significant? And I often say when I'm teaching, if we can't remember what social significance means, we want to replace the word significance with appropriate. Is that really appropriate? Is that really bettering this client's life in any way? Is this improving their skill set? Not at all, right? So it wouldn't be applied. And just like Jessica has done, we're going to go through the rest of them. So effective is when you want to, let's say you're implementing an intervention and maybe you're implementing something for, let's say, tantrum behaviors. And then you implement NCR, tantruming for attention. You implement NCR, 2 weeks later, you notice a decrease in the problematic tantrum-like behaviors. That would be effective. You can see from your data that the intervention is in fact effective because you are reducing the problematic behaviors. So the writing is just on the wall with effective, just what it sounds like is exactly what you're going for with your 7 dimensions of ABA for effective. And just as Jessica had stated, observable, you want to make sure when you're referring to observable, you're referring to behaviors that are measurable, that you can observe and measure, right? So if I go in to visit little Johnny at lunchtime when he's engaging in problematic behaviors, I want to go in and be able to observe and measure those behaviors. And lastly, we have analytic. And when I think of analytic, I always think of the word analyze, because it's not to be confused with applied, which happens every so often, right? So I always think of the word analyze, because if I'm analyzing a graph, I'm going to be analyzing it to look for that functional relationship. So whenever it's analytic, you're looking for a functional relationship between the IV and the DB, and that would be your treatment and the behavior, the target behavior that you're working with. Any questions, you guys? All right, let's keep it moving. Next question.
All right, guys, let's look at 5. We have Regina, who's one of our coaching students here as a BCBA, who she's going to be a BCBA soon, within about a week. She is working with her client, Jessica. Jessica is a 16-year-old adolescent who's preparing for the workplace. Regina teaches Jessica how to cash a check and withdraw money from the ATM at the bank nearest to her house. Which philosophical underpinning of behavior analysis does this exemplify? This is a tough one. So we have here philosophical doubt, pragmatism, parsimony, and empiricism. All right, guys. So I see lots of really, really good answers in the chat. I do see a lot of answers though. I got A, B, C, and D.
I did as well. I got a mix. We have a mix here.
Yes. And yeah, attitudes of science and philosophical underpinning, I'm using those interchangeably, but the answer is pragmatism, which is a attitude of science. Yes. So what do these things actually mean? The answer is pragmatism. So I really like to think of pragmatism as practical. All of our interventions should be practical. They should make sense, right? So when you're looking for a question, especially one like this, where it's kind of a little bit confusing, there's really no obvious black and white answer in the question, then you really want to look for keywords in the question. And I'm going to just kind of show you here what some of the keywords are. So you have here, it's at the bank nearest to her house, right? She's 16, she's preparing for the workplace. She's learning how to cash a check. She's learning how to withdraw money. So all of these are indicators that really what we're looking at is that the intervention is practical. So, and again, you could basically say other things here. None of the choices here, but there are other things you can call it. You can call it applied. All right, you can say it's socially significant. You can say that I'm following the relevance of behavior rule. And these are all terms, if you don't know what they are, we'll cover in our 5th edition course. But essentially what philosophical doubt means is that you're always cautious about and optimistic but cautious with research, right? You're open to being wrong. So we know that the field of ABA, and I've been in for 13 years, Katie's been into a long time. Some of you here have been in the field for a really long time, and you know that the field has changed. And that's because science is always changing and science is always evolving. So philosophical doubt means we're always going to be skeptical about the results of the study. We're always going to be skeptical that we have the best intervention, knowing that we may find information later that an intervention is actually better. And so parsimonious means to choose the simplest explanation first. This is that famous quote that says, think horses, not zebra, if you hear footsteps or hoofbeats, unless of course you live somewhere where there's zebras and not horses. But really just the idea that you're always going to go for the most simplest explanation and rule that out before you think of something more complicated. So for example, if a child, and I'm going to tell you this funny story and you'll remember this on your test. So listen, remember this story if you get the word parsimonious on your test. I was a junior ABA therapist. I was actually still in college. I hadn't graduated yet. I was working with this little boy. And one day, and his mom had a lot of money, and his parents had just an insane amount of money. And so they were paying for everything in cash, and they had every professional known to man that could potentially work in the field of autism working with this child. And so one day he came home from school and he started roaring like a lion. Like he was just like, roar. And so the mom just had a panic attack and she decided to call a conference. She got 12 professionals together, probably paid thousands of dollars for this meeting. And in this room, we have the occupational therapist, the behavior therapist, BCBA. I was not a BCBA at the time. I was actually still training. You had a speech therapist, everything, a play therapist, a psychologist. I mean, she had every professional that you could think of in the field of autism in that room. And they were all debating why this child was doing this, which we know is a private event, right? So I finally got to my turn to talk and I said, well, why don't we just ask him? And everyone looked at me like I had 7 heads. And he had said, and I said, and I'm going to say his name was Joe. It wasn't. I said, Joe, why are you like going rawr? He's like, I'm Simba, Lion King, rawr. It turns out he was just acting out the movie. So that's an example of before you jump to conclusions, just rule out the simplest explanation first. So I hope that story helps you to remember that. The last thing is empiricism. Empiricism is the idea that what we do is based on science, facts, observation. It's based on experiments, right? It's not just what we think, that what we do is rooted in empirical science, evidence-based practices and research. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. We wanted to do over these 5 questions today. Like I said, we are going to be doing this for every part of the task list this week.